Welcome to this week's Parsha Themes Shir. It's Parsha's Mattos Massei. It's a double portion, and it is for the refuge, the complete and speedy recovery of Moshe Shimon ben Leah Esther Chaya HaLevi. So Parsha's Mattos, the first parsha of the week, starts with Nedarim and oaths, and it indicates the power of speech. So God created the world by speaking it into existence with 10 sayings. Mavis v'chaim b'yad loshen. We learn that death and life are literally in the hands of the tongue, according to Proverbs. In other words, speech has the power to build and give life, as we see from Genesis when God used it in that way, but also to destroy. We need to be careful with everything that comes out of our mouths. The verse states, Ish ki yador neder Hashem, a man who shall vow a vow. According to all that comes out of his mouth shall he do. Speech is so powerful that if we make a vow and can no longer keep it, then we must have it annulled by a Beis Din, a court consisting of 3 Jews, or by a single expert. It's better that you not vow than that you should vow and not fulfill, says Ecclesiastes. So now we're talking about the war and the revenge against Midian. Moshe spoke to the people, Heichaltzu me'itchem anoshim laseis nikmas Hashem b'Midian. Men from amongst yourselves to take God's vengeance on Midian. But God had just said to Moshe, Nakom nikmas b'nei Yisrael me'es hamidyanim. Avenge the vengeance of the children of Israel upon the Midianites. So why did Moshe change the phrase? So God said to Israel, it is you who have an account to settle with them, for they caused me to harm you. But Moshe said, Master of the universe, if we had been uncircumcised, or idol worshippers, or had denied the mitzvahs, the Midianites would not have hated us. They persecute us only on account of the Torah and the precepts which you have given us. Consequently, the vengeance is yours. And so I say, to take God's vengeance on Midian. And also because whoever stands against Israel automatically stands against God. That is a fact which is undeniable. Therefore we should all stand on the right side, which is to support Israel. Alternatively, God sees the war on Midian as avenging Israel, for God's foremost concern is for his people, whereas the people of Israel see the war as avenging God, for they are concerned only with the honor of God. Now, perspective, the strength and the power of my hand. So the verse states, Elef lemata, lekol matos Yisrael tishlechu letzava. 1,000 per tribe, 1,000 per tribe. For all the tribes of Israel shall you send the army. So Moshe wanted to demonstrate that it is not the number of troops or their armaments that determines victory or defeat, but their worthiness. For Zimri had caused the death of 24,000 without a single sword or armament, while they, numbering only 12,000, would defeat the far more numerous Midianites, v'lo nifkad mimenu ish, and not a single one of them was killed in that war. We find an even greater demonstration of this principle later in Tanakh, in the Bible, when Gideon faced 135,000 armed Midianites. At the start, Gideon's army numbered 32,000 soldiers, but this was pared down to just 300 under divine guidance, in order to demonstrate that it is Hashem alone who creates victory in battles for the Jewish people, not the numbers of soldiers. We are warned never to make the mistake. And you may say in your heart, my strength and the power of my hand did all this for me, but that is not correct. Rather, despite appearances, everything is orchestrated and gifted to us directly by Hashem. The word chayil has military connotations, but Onkelos the Ger translates it as possessions, and Ibn Ezra similarly translates it as money. Experience shows that the feeling of power that can cause one to credit himself more and Hashem less can be prompted by either military or financial success. Yirmiyahu also applies it to the realm of intellect. Let the wise not pride himself in his wisdom, let the brave not pride himself in his bravery, and let the wealthy not pride himself in his wealth. That's Yirmiyah 9:22. Rather, everything, including all our abilities and talents, comes from Hashem, from God. Now we talk about the power of and the necessity for prayer. As we saw, Moshe instructed the people to mobilize an army consisting of 1,000 men from each tribe. Elef lamata lekol matos Yisrael. The Midrash Tanchuma and Midrash Rabbah explain this repetitious posuk to mean that 3,000 men were actually recruited from each tribe, 1,000 to fight the war, 1,000 to stand guard, and 1,000 to pray for the campaign's success. It is significant that tefillas, prayers, were necessary, despite the fact that Hashem specifically commanded Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, to wage this battle. In truth, whenever Bnei Israel went out to war in ancient times, this was done with Hashem's authorization after consulting with the Urim v'Tumim, the precious stones on the Kohen Gadol's breastplate, the high priest's breastplate, which would prophetically respond to questions posed to it. We might have assumed that once Bnei Israel received Hashem's clear authorization to fight, victory was guaranteed. After all, if he told them to go to war, then he would certainly assure their success. And yet, nevertheless, tefillas was still necessary. No matter how confident we are of success, we will still need to pour out our hearts before God in prayer and beg for his assistance, because tefillah, prayer, is an indispensable prerequisite for bracha or blessing. Hashem has an abundance of blessings with which to shower each and every one of us, but we still need to open the channel, and this is done through sincere, heartfelt prayer. We cannot access the bracha without davening, praying for it. So the blessings are there, but our tefillahs create the pipelines through which they can descend from the heavens into our lives. Tefillah creates the pipeline that brings our nation success, protection and prosperity, and we must all take part in the effort to build this pipeline. Now, the essence of Midian. The Hebrew word Midian means strife or quarrel. Midian is the essence of divisiveness, which is the root of all evil. Thus, our sages speak of groundless hatred as the greatest of evils. In truth, all strife is groundless hatred. The so-called grounds that people and nations have for hating and destroying each other are but the various facades of the divisive I of Midian, the ego that belies the common source and goal of humanity and views the very existence of others as an encroachment upon the self and a threat to its own survival. On the cosmic level, God is the ultimate oneness, and everything godly in our world bears the stamp of his unity. All evil derives from the distortion of this oneness by the veil of divisiveness in which God shrouds his creation. So before the people of Israel could conquer the 7 nations that inhabited the land of Canaan, which represent the 7 negative traits of the heart, they first had to destroy Midian, which is their source and cause. This is also why the destruction of Midian could be achieved only under the leadership of Moshe, who embodied the traits of utter self-abnegation and thus also harmony and truth. Now, Gad and Reuven's request to settle the east bank of the Jordan River. The tribes of Reuven and Gad approached Moshe and requested the right to permanently settle the region of Aver HaYarden, east of the Jordan River, the land which Bnei Israel had captured from the kingdoms of Sichon and Og. Moshe reacted angrily, accusing these 2 tribes of repeating Chet HaMeraglim, the sin of the spies, by refusing to proceed into Eretz Yisrael and preferring to remain permanently outside the land. Reuven and Gad clarified that the men would first build houses for their families and pens for their livestock, and then join the other tribes in the wars to conquer Eretz Yisrael across the river. Moshe agreed to allow these tribes to permanently settle Aver Yarden on condition that they fulfill this promise and participate in the battles along with the rest of Bnei Israel. In his initial response to Reuven and Gad, Moshe accuses Kamtem tachas uvosechem tarbus anoshim chatoim. You have risen in your forefathers' place a culture of sinful people. In other words, just as the previous generation sinned by refusing to enter Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, the people of Reuven and Gad have likewise decided to remain permanently outside the land. Targum Onkelos translates the words Tarbus Anoshim Chatoim as the students of sinful people. Accordingly, Moshe describes the people of Reuven and Gad as the students of the people who committed the sin of the spies. Now, obviously, the people of Reuven and Gad did not sit in a classroom learning from the people who had committed that sin nearly 40 years earlier, but they are nevertheless considered those people's students because in Moshe's eyes they were influenced by them and were now following their example. What this shows is that we are all teachers and we all have students. Everything we say and do has some impact upon the people around us. People are always watching us and listening to us. Even if we have no formal educational position, we are teachers in that people are observing us and being influenced by our conduct. One becomes a student not only by attending formal classes, but also by observing and emulating somebody's behavior. Many people today strive to be influencers, to have their voices heard, to have a strong social media presence with thousands of followers and subscribers. But the truth is that we are all influencers in our homes, in our synagogues, at work, at the gym, in the supermarket, driving on the roads. Our behavior has a subtle influence. Our influence cannot be measured and quantified by likes and followers, but it is real. We all have countless students who have in some way been affected by the way we speak and act. This is especially true of children. The most important means of influencing children is through modeling, not through the spoken word. Parents affect and guide their children primarily through the example that they set. Our children and others are always looking at us and being affected by us. And so all of us, without exception, are influencers. Now, half the tribe of Menashe also settled there on the east bank of the Jordan, together with Gad and Reuven. So why did half the tribe of Menashe ultimately settle the same piece of land? When Yaakov blessed his son Yosef's children, Menashe and Ephraim, he switched his hands to give the younger son Ephraim preference over the elder Menashe. How did Menashe react? Not with anger or even slight resentment. Rather, he took it in his stride with quiet acceptance. This was a defining characteristic of Menashe, one of humility and equanimity. Therefore, the settling of the tribe of Menashe together with them provided Gad and Reuven with an example of people that would foster harmony rather than seek dominance. Menashe had demonstrated this quality for generations. Their defining characteristic was the ability to accept a supporting role for the greater good. They were chosen because their tribal DNA was encoded with the values of humility and peace. Now, being above suspicion. So Moshe expressed his consent to the tribes of Reuven and Gad, emphasizing that they must uphold their commitment by joining the other tribes in the battles to conquer Eretz Israel. If they fulfilled this promise, Moshe said, then V'hayisem nakiyim me'Hashem u'miYisrael. You shall be innocent before God and before Israel. The Mishnah in Shekalim cites this verse in reference to halacha requiring the treasurers of the Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, to avoid all suspicion. When the appointed official would enter the treasury to remove the money donated by Bnei Israel to purchase animals for the korbanos, he was not allowed to walk in with anything in which he could hide coins in order to avoid suspicion of stealing public funds. The Mishnah teaches a person has to not only fulfill his obligation to Hashem, but also ensure his innocence in the eyes of other people. We must not only act honestly, but make it clear that we act honestly, so that people recognize our integrity. This is derived from Moshe's pronouncement to Reuven and Gad in our Parsha, that they must be innocent not only before Hashem, but also in the eyes of their fellow Jews. We need to be nakiyim, clean, or innocent in every sense of the word, both in the eyes of Hashem, who sees and knows everything we do, but also in the eyes of other people, ensuring to not even appear to do something morally objectionable. Now, Israel's journeys. These are the journeys of the children of Israel going out to the land of Mitzrayim, of Egypt, it says in chapter 33, verse 1. Yisu May, and they journeyed from, and then it gives a list of all the places they journeyed from, and they camped at, which is a couple of verses later. It would seem that there was only one journey which took the nation out of Egypt, their journey from Ramses to Sukkot. The other journeys listed in our Parsha were between points outside of the geographical borders of Egypt. Why then does the Torah speak of the journeys in the plural of the children of Israel going out of the land of Mitzrayim, of Egypt? So Mitzrayim, the Hebrew word for Egypt, means borders and narrows. On the spiritual level, the journey from Egypt is a journey from the boundaries that limit us, an exodus from the narrow straits of habit, convention, and ego to the good, broad land of the infinite potential of our godly soul. The journey from Mitzrayim is a perpetual one. What is expansive and uninhibited by yesterday's standards is narrow and confining in light of the added wisdom and new possibilities of today's station. Thus, each of life's journeys is an exodus from the land of Mitzrayim. Having transcended yesterday's limitations, we must again journey from the Mitzrayim that our present norm represents relative to our newly uncovered potential, in order to eventually achieve our full spiritual rectification. Also, the Torah seems to recount not the journeys, but the 42 encampments at which they stopped during their sojourn in the Sinai desert. Why is this? To show that these encampments were not ends unto themselves, only way stations and stepping stones to advance the nation of Israel in their goal of attaining the promised land. So the stops themselves are referred to, therefore, as journeys. The same is true of the journey of life. Pauses, interruptions, and setbacks are an inadvertent part of a person's sojourn on earth. But when everything a person does is toward the goal of attaining the Holy Land, the sanctification of the material world, these too are journeys. Ultimately, they are shown to have been the true motors of progression, each an impetus to the realization of one's mission and purpose in life. Now, the cities of refuge. This is where accidental murderers gained mercy. So an accidental murderer is able to flee to one of the cities of refuge which the Torah instructs the nation to build and designate as such. If these cities didn't exist, then the Goel Adam, the avenger of blood of the victim, his family member, would be able to kill the perpetrator in revenge. The rule is that the perpetrator stays there in this city of refuge, not for a fixed time, but until the death of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. Therefore, even mothers of the Kohen Gadol would visit the site cities of refuge with food treats for the residents to attempt to bribe them into not praying for the death of their sons. But how is this just? The perpetrator could be imprisoned there in the city of refuge for a day, a year, or for the rest of his life. The answer is that every such perpetrator gets precisely the term he deserves because everything is down to Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence. The sentence he gets is divinely designed to be perfectly just and appropriate for every single one of these accidental murderers. There are also 48 Levite cities which were spread out throughout the land in order that the Levites, who were engaged in constant Torah study and the service of God, should have a positive spiritual effect on the rest of the nation. Some of the Levite cities served also as cities of refuge because the Levites' lives were the antithesis of unintentional murder. The murderer's confinement to these cities therefore served to neutralize the effect of his crime. But even unintentional murderers were liable to the death penalty if the murder was the result of their negligence. Negligence that can result in another person's death is a blatant disregard for other people's welfare. This insensitivity toward other people is diametrically opposed to the ideals of brotherhood exemplified by the Levites. The Levites' role is to connect the Jewish people with God through the tabernacle and temple service, and to connect them with one another by teaching them the Torah. Similarly, all of us can learn from and emulate the Levites. We should all strive to enhance our connection to our fellow human beings, their connection to each other, and their connection to God, so that we always take care to ensure that no physical or spiritual harm comes to another person. Now, the divine gift of Israel to the Jewish people. The pasuk, the verse says, "V'horashtem es haaretz v'yeshavtem ba, ki lachem nasati es haaretz l'rashasosa." You shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land and dwell in it, for I have given you the land to possess it. Rashi asks, the Torah should have begun with the verse, "This month shall be to you the head of months," in Shemos, which is the first mitzvah commanded to the Jewish people. Why then does it begin with Bereshis? In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, as we know. So Rashi answers, the reason is so that if the nations of the world will say to the people of Israel, "You are thieves, for you have conquered the lands of 7 nations," they will reply to them, "The entire world is God's. He created it and he gives it to whomever he desires. It was his desire to first give it to them, and also according to his desire, it was taken from them and given to us, the Jewish people." This gift covers the entire land of Israel, including Judea and Samaria, the not occupied West Bank, and the whole of Jerusalem, Gaza, and much more besides. And all that will come about very soon, God willing, when all the Jews return to Eretz Israel and rebuild the Holy Temple with the coming of Mashiach, the Messiah, soon in our days. Thank you for watching, and it is a new book of the Torah next week, which begins with Parsha Devarim. So see you, God willing, then. Thank you.